In this episode of the Business of E-commerce, I talk with Jason Berkowitz about 3 secret SEO tactics. This is the Business of E-commerce, episode 103. Welcome to the Business of E-commerce, the show that helps e-commerce retailers start, launch, and grow the e-commerce business. I'm your host, Charles Plesky, and I'm here today with Jason Berkowitz. Jason is the founder of Break the Web, an inbound marketing agency based in New York City, who has been helping clients with SEO strategies since 2010. I asked Jason on the show today to talk about how you can use SEO to help grow your e-commerce business. So hey, Jason, how you doing today?
Hey, Charles, doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Great to have you on the show. SEO is one of those things that you can almost never get enough of. Like, it's always this evolving thing, right? Where, 2019 today, and even the stuff from last year, or even the stuff from earlier this year, right? It seems outdated by this time. So it's always nice to kind
Yeah,
of keep talking about this.
yeah. Google is definitely keeping the SEO community on their toes with ever-evolving changes, updates, and everything that's happening all algorithmically. But yeah, just it's definitely keeping us on our toes. It's probably the best way to put it.
Yep. Yeah. SEO, it's also unique for e-commerce, right? Where, they're very page heavy, I guess what you'd say. People have blog content, but they might only have, several 100 posts, let's say. But with e-commerce, you could easily have thousands of product pages, and you need to kind of differentiate each one. So, what are some challenges, and what do you kind of recommend with e-commerce clients to actually help them, stand out from the noise?
Yeah, I think you actually nailed one of the biggest challenges is that creating that differentiation on specific products. People might create multiple product pages for the same product where there's just one different variation that's different, whether it's the color, a size, those are typical. Trying to make them as unique as possible would be the goal, whether that's a completely unique product description, completely unique meta description, page title as much as you can. The reason is because you want to avoid the two pages possibly competing with each other on Google search results. That is called keyword cannibalization. And what they will essentially do is cancel each other out and neither will rank just because Google doesn't know which one might be the most appropriate. So with creating that differentiation, the goal would be to try to make them as unique as possible. And that is a challenge in and of itself, trying to make a product description for the same product unique. Obviously, even in a more ideal world would be to have those filters set directly on our product page where they can adjust size, color. But essentially trying to make each product as unique as possible. One thing we see also a lot when new e-commerce sites launch is that they'll use a lot of templated information, which might get carried over to multiple products, which again is not creating that differentiation. It is time consuming, but to hit every single SKU as best as possible to essentially create something very unique is the best route to go on in that aspect.
Yeah, that's always tough. I was actually just talking to a client here literally before this call, and they're loading in hundreds of products kind of in bulk, large batches come in, and they're using descriptions from a distributor, which are pulled from a manufacturer. And these are, very like, the large red widget type of thing. They're not, and some of these manufacturers, their descriptions are so just basic. Would
No
you,
conversion aspect there. Yeah.
yeah. Would you really go through and rebuild each one from scratch, or what do you do with folks that actually kind of have a lot of SKUs?
So I would focus on conversion. That's another big reason why people might not necessarily hit that add to cart option is because they may have not been getting the answers to the questions they had, or maybe the copy on the product description didn't really meet their needs or what the typical questions might be. Uh, SEO comes second, essentially, to conversion and aesthetics. So I would focus on that first, making sure that the copy is set up to convert or set up that the product description is something that is unique. Like you said, many of these big warehouse or manufacturers aren't taking the time to have something creative in their content. They usually just want to give the basic descriptions. Here's what you need to know about the product: size, length, weight, whatever it might be, colors, material. Definitely take the time to get a little bit creative with your product description, showcase the market differentiators, why they should buy your product versus something else, and focus on the conversion and then tweak after for SEO and see what can be modified for SEO value later.
Got it. Okay. So start with like the people in mind and not the robots, right?
Yeah, and that's what Google says that they want is they want you to focus on the user. And I do air quotes because Google is known to say one thing and mean a different thing, but it does come into play in the fact that bringing traffic to your website via SEO is great and all, but if you're not converting, was all that worth it? And that's the question. So make sure that your website is aesthetically pleasing, has good copy, great product descriptions that are unique, that pretty much might answer all the questions somebody might have initially right off the bat, and focus on getting that add to cart button. And then once you check out the cart, of course, conversion optimization to get that checkout.
Got it. What is some recent kind of happenings with SEO? I feel like every time I kind of like have left the scene a little bit, and every time I come in, there'll be like five different big Google changes. Everyone's kind of freaking out, and then they have these like odd names. What's been the 2019 list of crazy
Yeah.
Google search name changes that happened?
Google actually introduced something very new this month, I believe, and it's a big game changer. Well, not a game changer. We'll see how that plays out. I have my own personal opinions on it, but new link attributes, which means that we are familiar with most of the time no follow links, in which a certain attribute will be added to the code of a link to basically tell Google, we're going to link to this other website. We might not necessarily trust them, but we'll link to them. They added two new link attributes that they will support. One is called user generated content, or UGC, as a link attribute, which basically states that the content was generated by users, things like forums or reviews. And then another one was sponsored, to represent what is a sponsorship opportunity or advertorial. It's interesting. There's a lot of different multiple sides of how this is all going to come into play. My honest opinion is it's probably not going to get used very heavily. People are going to stick with the no follow if they do decide to continue that route. And Google has said that the no follow route is still perfectly acceptable and suitable in most cases. There's also a lot of other people in the community that think that Google's trying to rely on publishers and editors to teach their machine learning algorithms what would be user generated content and what would be a sponsored link. So that's kind of the new happenings that happened in the SEO world. I know it's super sexy, but yeah, it's interesting to see how that's going to really play out over the next year. We all have our own assumptions.
How would they treat it differently, right? Because I know, let's say you shouldn't do this, but let's say you want to do this, and you just run around the internet and comment on a bunch of
Yeah,
blogs, try to get links back. They're all no follow, so they do nothing for you. Would like would these mean it? Would these user generated content or sponsored pages give you any kind of link juice, or are they just also kind of just, I don't know, worthless is the right word, but very
yeah.
low value?
I think it's a bit too early that anyone has been able to create some concrete testing. But I think logic will showcase kind of like a no follow link in the sense that they're going to be linking to a sponsored website. Is that a passive trust? The whole point of links and why backlinks really matter is because it's sending trust from one relevant website to another. It's kind of like mimicking word of mouth. Hey, Charles, you know a good plumber? Yeah, use ABC Plumbing. I'm going to trust ABC Plumbing because they came from your recommendation. And links kind of act in the same way. If something, though, has an ulterior motive and not necessarily a passive trust, how much SEO value can essentially be passed from there, I think is the question. Uh, I think logically, the assumption would be very low, but it might be a little bit too early to tell.
Yeah, I feel like until it always kind of follows WordPress. I feel like is one of the big things. Once they make an update and they change, everyone kind of like, I don't know what percentage of the web runs on WordPress, but it's just like astronomical, like two-digit percentage is like on WordPress. So I feel like once they implement this into core, that's when we really kind of find out what's happening. I don't know. That's just my opinion, at least.
Well, the question is if they implement it,
Yeah.
because they haven't natively, from what I understand, they haven't implemented no follow links. So when you're creating a link in no follow, I know there's a lot of different plugins that you can add to have that checkbox to make it a no follow link
WordPress has not implemented no follow.
natively.
Oh,
So
really?
this is WordPress on the CMS side, not on their free blog standpoint.
Okay.
So, for example, like our agency website is a WordPress website. For me to make a website that I'm linking out to a no follow link, I would either need to manually put it in the code on the content, or a nice plugin that you can get is something that just adds all outgoing no follow links, all outgoing links to be no follow, or have a checkbox there, make this no follow, and you check that. I don't believe natively they have the option to make outgoing links no follow from the CMS standpoint on your own website.
Gotcha. as a publisher, and this is pretty off topic, but we'll come back here. What is the benefit of having more no follow links versus do follow links? I guess would be the inverse of that.
Outbound or inbound?
Outbound. Like, why not just do follow all your like? Why not, as let's say you have a huge blog? Why would you even bother with no follow if
So take Forbes, for example. Forbes.com was known to be one of the many different high tier one websites that were being used for sponsored content. And people would say, I can get your post or get you a link on Forbes.com, give me 2 grand and you got it. And it's that type of abuse, essentially, that was causing the reputation of Forbes to go down a little bit on whether Forbes was trustworthy. And Forbes made the switch, just like many others, like Inc.com, HuffPo, many other big tier one publications, made all outbound links no follow for that exact reason. So they kind of stop incentivizing people to monetize their website. But on the other hand, it's also a signal for trust. So typically, linking out to a website, no harm, no foul. You're not losing anything from it. It's just the other website has potential to gain. If you're not necessarily trusting of the website, that's really the purpose in my eyes of no follow. To say to Google, I will link out to this website. I won't necessarily trust them, their content, their expertise, but they're going to be labeled as a resource here. I think is the biggest one. In my eyes, I see it primarily to reduce the amount of sponsorship requests. Spammers might say, oh, they're making all outbound links to follow. Not worth hitting them up to try to get a guest post or something.
so? Let's say you are a retailer though, and you need more inbound do follow links. What's like the right thing to do, and going
Uh,
into 2020 here to actually get these inbound links?
Yeah, so there are link sellers that have great relationships with some publications that might be able to get you these type of links. Of course, you're running the risk of the quality of the link, the context of the link, what's surrounding that link in terms of contextually. Are the words matching up? Is the content even great? Having a link on very poorly written content is kind of a inconsistency. It's not something you really want. The best way to go about it, the way we do it in our agency, is old school outreach, kind of like PR style outreach, where we try to build relationships or dip into our current relationships that might be relevant for our clients and try to just have an exchange of value and say, hey, here's something that would be great to write about, or here's our client that does this. What would it take just to get them mentioned? Or is this something that would be interesting to your readers? So it's a bit more work and definitely revolves around time. But taking that step out, reaching out to your favorite blogs, journalists, editors, just to help spread the word, kind of like what a PR specialist would do essentially, is a great natural way to build links.
So it sounds like the hard work way. So there's no shortcut. I can just hit a button and get like hundreds of inbound links. I feel like that's what
It
everyone's
used to
selling.
be.
Yeah, it used
It
to be,
used to
right?
be. Yeah, back in the old days of SEO, literally you can build thousands of links at the click of a button in 10 minutes, and you would instantly rank for some absolutely crazy things. Um, that's just the old algorithm.
Yeah, the good part about this, I would kind of try to look at the other way, right?
Yeah.
I think they've made it more difficult, and I get it. But the good part about that is, as a retailer, your competitors probably aren't doing this work either, right? Or it's gonna be more difficult for everyone. So, maybe you can only get 10 inbound links versus 1,000 back in the day, but they're more valuable now. They actually
Yeah.
matter. Versus before, you could just get thousands of these like worthless links. And now,
Quantity versus quality.
yeah, exactly. So what else? Yeah, because I we get this too actually, where a lot of the inbound links, it's literally like a phone call with someone that we know here, and hey, we wrote this article, it would actually be good for you guys, and like it's really this like it's almost like sales at this point. You're really like it's a big deal to get a link. It feels like versus before, it just felt like yeah, anyone can link to anyone.
Yeah, I think it's, well, first of all, if somebody's calling you, I give them props. That's like a lot of work as opposed to many other people who might just send out emails in bulk to a small amount of people, maybe 50 to 60 people. Uh, but it is a little bit of work. It comes down to the end goal, like you said, the quality of the link and how it comes into play contextually versus the quantity.
Yep. Any other ways? I mean, it really feels like it's just like one-on-one thing almost now where you have to really like know the person. Are there any other, you know, tips people are
Just
doing
try to
here?
create an exchange of value. That's an exchange of value. You
Mm.
know, why a lot of people, like, we get a lot of spam per day, like 100 emails a day. People saying, "Let me guest post to your site," or "I have something great for your audience," but there's no exchange of value, or we don't even open them. They just go immediately to the trash. Why are you worthy of a first getting me to engage in your email? What value are you presenting? What do you have to offer us? Is it money? Is it a great audience that you might have to share your post? What could it be? Have something that could be engaging to our readers. You know, if we had a blog that would be relevant or has a big audience, as opposed to saying, let me just submit content with a link in mind. So when we, for example, if we do go the route of trying to have an exchange of value like that, our goal would be to create some kick-ass content that they would be proud to share on their social media channels. So we don't go for those cheap article creation routes. We have in-house writers that take the time to research a content piece, maybe make some creatives and graphics if it's applicable. So it is work, but we are providing value to their readers, and it is something of a mutual exchange. You know, they understand we might be linking to our site, which is fine for them because it's not linked to promotionally. It makes sense. Maybe they're citing an article that we have to back up what's being posted on their website. Think of providing value as opposed to just expecting something. Like, I have a great post, which we all know is not great. It's written by somebody out of the country, out of the US, that English is not the first language. That tends to happen. Just, yeah, I think the best way to put it is showcase value, you know?
Yeah. Do you recommend building the article ahead of time and then going to them with this completed article with creatives and everything like that and saying, hey, we have this, take a look? Or are you going to them with just concepts ahead of time and saying, hey, we're thinking of writing the ultimate guide to X or whatever it is. Are you interested? Like, which way do you do this?
Both. So the only way we will technically have content pre-written is if we created something then it got rejected, which does happen. Sometimes messaging was off. So to avoid us losing in that aspect, we would try to pitch it. But typically at the same time, we would also try to pitch new topics. So here's an article we created on this topic. Feel free to check it out. If it looks good, there we go. If not, here's some other ideas or here's some other concepts that might be good for your blogs or for your readers. Does any of these work? So that's where it might be both. Typically, we approach with trying to create something new and unique, so we can aim to match their voice, match their style, and also match the personality of their audience. But if we do have something, we try to make use out of it, just so it wasn't time and money wasted internally. Um, so
Yeah, I know. The best is I've gotten pitched concepts and then they also link back to other articles they've written. And they'll come and say, we have this concept for you. We think this would fit great. And here's 10 of the posts we did for other folks to kind of show, an example of their work sort of thing. And that's one of those things that then you're able to look and get the sample, get the idea. And if it really does fit, then you're going to get something similar quality. And that's something, I don't know, it's always worked, at least inbound with me.
that's awesome. Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Well, not something I've done. It's something we get pitched for articles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. How long are you actually spending generating this content on like a per article basis? Is this, so you're not going to some, I'm trying to think of the right way of saying this. You're not paying someone $3 an hour to create some spammy article. So like, what are you doing and what sort of commitment is this?
So it really depends on the article and how much research needs to be involved. If it is something that our in-house writer is very familiar with, she's collected so much information. One of our writers, this is why we love her so much, is because she enjoys writing, but also she enjoys the reading aspect of the research aspect of it, because she's learning so much. And by this, she's kind of like a computer that's collecting all this information that she can use for another article if necessary. So if it is something that she's very, very familiar with, it can be a great 2,000 word article, maybe in an hour or so. And then it goes through the proofreading and then maybe a couple of revisions later on. But that would be the typical time frame. If it is something that is brand new to her, or or requires a lot of research, we would go two routes. Either she would research and get that part done, or we would seek out an expert in that topic that is an expert at writing on a specific topic. There's a plethora of places to get experts that are awesome at writing, things like Upwork for freelance websites. So we might seek out a writer if it's a unique project or a unique article content piece, is the route we would go on, and that would be a per project fee. So I don't really know how much time it would take them, but at the end of the day, we have something delivered. The typical average article, too long, didn't read, can probably be maybe 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, give or take, for one um, basic piece. It doesn't have much statistics or much research in there.
Is there a target kind of length or like what is kind of the target when you're building these, right? Because over a certain size, you can't write a small book because no one's going to read it. But also you can't write like a paragraph either, right? So there's like, and it seems like articles have gotten longer. At least that's my sense of they used to be blog articles that were like super short and just like a graphic, and now it's getting to be like longer and longer. But like, where is where's the range that's kind of right nowadays?
We have some publishers that will say that they have a minimum word count, which is fine. I think the goal should be to hit a count that accurately displays the message. The problem with many books, for example, that you might buy on Amazon, is that they have repetitive paragraphs and repetitive chapters just for the sake of trying to fill it out a little bit more. If you can answer probably the best way you can in 500 words, why go over? Why bore somebody? Why risk losing that conversion aspect if you have a call to action at the bottom of the article? If it's an in-depth article, it might be a little bit more. I wouldn't necessarily focus on a specific count, but more focus in how long does it take to get to the point, answer the question while providing supplemental information.
Got it. Okay. So if there is, if yeah, because I've seen this before, publishers
It's an
really do.
ambiguous answer, I know.
Yeah, I like the dancing around. Basically, as short as you can get away with, but the publishers might stop you as well. Yeah, because I've seen this before where they have a hard limit and they literally just reject it if it's below. Um, and they usually have what is a style guide, kind of explain the length, the voice, that sort of thing. Um, any other kind of tips you give to a retailer that you're working with around this? Because I like this. It feels like I was talking with Noah Kagan I think it was last week. And yeah, episode 102. And we were talking about goal setting, right? On you can't go out and say, I want to hit a goal of X number of dollars per month. Like you could, right? But it's not something you can directly control. But this concept of you want to pitch 5 different blogs, you want to write 3 different articles, whatever that number is, this is something that even as a smaller retailer, you could set that as a goal and just say, every month, no matter what, I have to pitch 10 blogs. Whether they say yes or no, I just have to pitch them. And you could start to set some sort of numbers like that. So I feel like this is something where you can get like a cadence going and,
Yeah,
just
test.
test and get in the mode. And maybe you pitch 10 and out of that you get one, or maybe the number is 100 to one, whatever that is, but at least you'll learn.
Yeah, split test. See what works. Try something new. If you're trying the same thing for a while and you've sent out 100 emails and you're getting a 0% reply rate or success rate, probably time to switch it up and get creative. Think about it like this. Again, we get maybe a little over 100 spam emails like that per day, which typically all go to the trash. Your goal would be to create something different, create something that they will open and they will read your email and then hopefully reply. Don't be like the I will review a high quality article or check out my product. I will send you a sample for free, which many people like free stuff, which is great and all. Focus on being different. If you have a personality on your brand, showcase that personality. Be weird, be quirky. We're doing a website redesign soon, and we're mentioning dad jokes just because I tend to be super weird and make weird dad jokes in inappropriate times. So that we're putting that personality on our website. Showcase your personality, be different, create something that's engaging, and that if you receive that type of email, you would be quite shocked and respond. Um, I've seen some really interesting things that have gotten attention. Things like, and again, it does require, but if you're only sending out 10 emails a day, you can do something creative with their brand, with their logo. Maybe take a picture of it, of you holding their logo, or whatever, of you in the body of the email. That's engaging. It shows that you took the time to research them and you got ahead and just say, hey, look at me over here. I'm holding your brand. Um, actually took the time to send you something personal versus just adding you to a list of 300 people that are going to get the same email.
Yeah, I was actually pitched by someone before. I think it was actually for the show, and they were on the site doing using Loom. Have you ever used that?
Yeah,
It's it allows you to capture the screen and your face at the same time. So they were on the business of e-commerce site with them talking to me through this like video. So I was like, oh, this is there. actually like this is really just like they recorded just for me. It wasn't like a thing they recorded. I mean, maybe I don't know some other childs they were talking to, but it really was. And they were talking, and I don't know why they were on the site. It actually didn't really make any sense, but you could see from the thumbnail, like, but at least you could see from the thumbnail that they were on the site. So you're like, I have to click this now, and clearly there's a person, so I have to at least see what they're going to say, right? So something like that really grabs my attention. I know being on the receiving end of this.
Yeah, showcasing that it is something personal, that they're not pretty much. We all probably get those emails where people massively failed at those bulk sending, where you see the brackets of, hey, first name. We all see them when they just screw up really bad. That's what we're used to seeing. If you want to, and any publisher is used to seeing those type of emails. Be different. Take that time to be a bit more personal. Maybe acknowledge something on their website. If you find an error on their website, that's always a win. To say, hey, you have this error on your site. I was browsing, trying to get an idea of the audience, their personality that you might have in your site. Here's something I noticed which you might want to fix ASAP. That's one of, even if, for example, I don't have an ulterior motive. If I'm on a website, I might just email them, hey, notice this issue. Toodaloo. Goodbye.
Yeah. I actually had someone one time. I have some good examples of this as a publisher. Someone sent me a screenshot of them giving a 5-star rating in iTunes for the show, um, and talking, and they were kind of pitching something, and I was saying, "Oh, it's actually a pretty clever." It was like literally iTunes, and I could see them, and their mouse was on like the submit button, and they wrote up this big rating,
Yeah,
and you get the little
that's an exchange
notification.
of value.
Yeah, and you kind of saw that, and it wasn't like it was like, "Oh, I already rated you." It wasn't like, "I will rate you if you do this." It was like, "Hey, I gave you a 5-star rating. I listened to this episode and they cited they quoted a bunch of things." It's like, oh, they really did their research, right? So you read through the whole pitch, even though it's like long-winded. But
Yeah.
now I read through it.
Have you ever heard of the book by Robert Cialdini, Influence?
Yes, that's a great, yeah. Talk about
So
that.
that's
That's a great one.
where, yeah, they're pretty much falling into the laws of reciprocation. Hey, I did this for you. I scratched your back. Can you come and scratch mine? Which enhances the probability of them getting a great response. Great book recommendation for anybody that's in marketing or conversion or just trying to understand the human psychology. But that's with the power and the law of reciprocation. And it's an exchange of value. That's really what they did.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely. And when someone does that, you feel almost required to at least give them some attention back. They gave you attention, so you're going to give them attention back. Versus that like, hey, bracket first name, they didn't give you an attention. You get it, so you feel like you don't owe them anything because they didn't give you anything really. Um, so yeah, I definitely you can feel that being on the receiving end of this. Any other than just like written content, like let's say I'm sitting here listening and I'm saying, you know what, I'm an awful writer, or I just don't like. Some people just don't like this. Is there? I remember like a few years ago, infographics were like this thing that everyone was producing, and then everyone got kind of bored of them. Is that, or maybe they didn't, I don't know. But is that still a thing, or are there other non-written pieces of content people still use?
Yeah, I thought it kind of faded away, kind of like you, that it was an old school thing. But I actually have a few colleagues that are still killing it with infographics for getting links back. And maybe it's because it kind of died down a little bit over the years that it's not so hot anymore. Uh, but it's not something that I've really delved into as a marketing tactic. But I do know people that are still using infographics with a lot of success, to my own surprise, where I said bullshit on you and your links, and they showed it to me. I was like, damn. Right. So they've pretty much fine tuned it over the years when it was hot and are still having success with it. Why stop it? Other things that are related aside from content, um, of course, there's always sponsorship opportunities, and you run the risk of getting that sponsor link or a no follow link, of course. But content really is king. You know how so from an SEO standpoint, we use content to create thematic relevancy of a page. So when Google comes in, they understand what a page is about just by reading the content. Without the content, the page title, meta information, they simply won't know what a page is about. So that's where they use content. And for a site to link to you, what would be natural? Are they citing your piece of content as a resource for statistics? Are they linking out to it because it was a great product? Now, product pages don't need to have a couple hundred words of content. That's just really losing the conversion aspect. But that would be the other alternative in an e-commerce site, is if you have a product page that's aiming to get links. Anything else, videos, rich media still work great. You mentioned infographics slash images. That can be, again, another tool if you market it right and create that differentiation. I still see a lot of, I created this awesome graphic. You should link to it on this page on your site. Um, that probably won't work as well, but videos is a good one. I think that a lot of e-commerce companies aren't utilizing, to be honest with you. People want to see a face, and I think a lot of e-commerce clients aren't necessarily, their about us page talks about the company as a whole, which is great, but people want to see a face to the name, and they want to hear a great story. No one loves more than a great entrepreneurial story. Create a face to the name, put a video, have a video just introducing yourself, showing off your products, have a weekly video series where you show something new or give value. It could be on a blog post, but a video, and then the content can essentially be a transcript of the video. So you don't really need to work very hard to do both, creating unique content, but people can link to that video page that's hosted on your website.
Yep. Is that something you could get? So you would try to share the video though, or are you just talking about hosting, kind of just giving like about us and that sort of thing? Like, where would you actually use the
Um,
video?
you can just host it on YouTube and
Okay.
then just embed it on your website. There's also a lot of other players that you can embed on your site if you want a different type of look where maybe YouTube might not be appropriate. And then from a content standpoint, yeah, you can make it as a blog post and say, hey, mentioned you. If you mention a company, for example, as a great example, that might be a thought leader.
Yep.
Mention that in a video saying, hey, we mentioned you in this video. Would your social followers like that? And then if they share the video to their following, there's a decent chance that that following that's reading it might link to it. So while social media doesn't have a direct correlation into SEO, it could have an indirect correlation into SEO if somebody does see it and links to it. That's one tactic that I've seen work very well. Saying, for example, this company and their product so and so is absolutely killing it with this market. It's more thought leadership content. But then you reach out to them and say, "Hey, you were mentioned." Just one idea.
Yeah, because if a larger brand mentions you, they're kind of, even though on social, right? So social doesn't do anything for SEO link juice, but it does make you look more credible for now the hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of folks that have seen that, and then, like you said, they might actually, some one of them might actually be a publisher.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of these editors are just looking for content. A lot of these social media managers that might be working for these publications are out of content ideas. I know a lot of big companies that publish 300 or 400 content pieces a day. But if they might be looking for something different, if they're mentioning that might be a little bit low success rate, you probably won't be able to get something secured if they are publishing that much content. But you know, you can even check out their social media feed, see how often they're posting. Maybe they just need something new to post that's not super promotional. We're just saying, hey, we were mentioning this, or check out so and so's review of this. You know, whatever it might be. I think you can get a little bit creative.
Very cool.
I'm just brainstorming right now.
Yeah, no, these are, and I feel like some of this is good, right? Where it's just new
Some of
stuff. Yeah,
it.
it's just new stuff, right? Because you start, if you read, sometimes when you're fishing through blog posts, you start reading it and you hear this tactic, and then you read, and then you kind of, you're like, oh, it feels like I've heard this before, and you scroll up to the top, you're like, oh, it's 2012, and you're like, oh, okay, now I see why I've seen this before. So just kind of this conversation, it's, and like I said at the very beginning, it's just like evolving things. You need to be, and I don't, oddly I get a lot of this information from podcasts also, just because folks like yourself, they do the research, and then you can kind of just listen and hear, oh, so this is where things are in, the current year, and not just, this old stuff from long ago, that probably isn't working anymore. So super helpful. I love the different brainstorming tactics. Been a big help there.
Yeah, and then just getting creative. I think I know that even in this conversation, I've had some ideas that I'm going to be writing down right after this call. And I don't know if somebody else has done it before. I don't know if it's written in format, but it might be something that would be worthy of us trying internally here in the form of videos.
All right. Well, you're gonna have to try that, and we'll have you back on the show and talk about that and find out. So, if people want to kind of follow you, check out the agency, where can they do that?
You can find me at breaktheweb.agency, LinkedIn, jasonberkowitz.com, or just Googling my name.
Awesome, Jason. It was great having you on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.